Hello, everyone, and welcome back. We are continuing our analysis through earnings, and at this juncture or point, we've ended up on the idea of commission. So previously, we had a look at the concept of salary, where we said if you made so much money per year, how much did you make per month or every 2 weeks, and so forth. Another way we can earn money is through the idea of commission. Commission is earnings that are based on a percentage of sales made. So typical examples of this might be when you have a car salesman who's interested in selling cars, or a real estate agent who sells a house. They would make a percent of that instead. So the kind of calculation that we're interested in is as follows. So, what is 8% of 20,000? So, we saw this before actually at the start of the course when we were looking at percent problems, but this is where it again will apply in full. So, here, what is 8% of 20,000? So, we convert the percent to a decimal by taking 8 divided by 100. On your calculator, if you type that in, you will get 0.08. And then you take 0.08 and multiply it by 20,000. So on your calculator, take your 0.08, multiply it by 20,000, and I'm going to get 1,600 at the end. And that's actually going to be it for that kind of question. Okay. So there's nothing special about small numbers. We can also do quite large numbers. So say, for example, what is 3.25% of 200,000? Well, we can take our 3.25 division sign 100. This will give us 0.0325. So we should take 3.25 division sign 100, and this will be equal to 0.0325. And then we can take our 0.0325 and multiply it by 200,000. So we take our 0.0325 multiplied by 200,000. So when we do this, we get 6,500 as an answer. So this is the key skill that we're going to need in order to continue. And so how do these two examples apply in a real life setting? Well, suppose we have this situation. Brianna is a real estate broker who earns 4.25% commission on the selling price of a house. So we'll underline that. 4.25% in commission. That tells us it's important. How much does she earn on a house that sells for 318,000? And so now we would like to go ahead and determine what the commission will be on this. So go ahead now and try that out for yourselves, and then we'll see how you did. And so now for this question is actually just an application question of examples 1 and 2. So let's see how this is done. Thank you for all those who threw out some answers in the chat. Okay, so what we want to do is take our 4.25 and we want to invoke the division sign. So we will divide it by 100. So when we do this, we're going to get 0.0425 as an answer. We can always double check it on our calculator to make sure that this is indeed going to be the answer. And so it is. And so now we take our 0.0425, and we'll go back to red here just because it's easier to view. And we're going to multiply it by this 318,000 number. And so we take our 0.0425 and multiply it by 318 of 1,000. And so I'm going to get this 13,515 number. And that's going to be our answer. We can always double check it to make sure that this is the case. So we're going to take our 0.0425, multiply it by 13,515. Oh, it looks like we made a mistake here. So let's try this again, because it seemed to be off. So we'll take our, I know what I did. I multiplied it by the answer instead of multiply it by the number. Well, these things happen. So 0.0425 multiplied by 318,000. And so that's why I like to double check my answer, because sometimes just to make sure I get the right thing or see why I got the wrong answer. Okay, so with that, like that's commission. So what I'd like you to do now is to try out these practice questions. So figuring out a percent of a number, some more application questions, and then the questions I'm most interested in are questions 3 and 4. Question 3 and 4 were like the toy question that we studied for piecework, insofar as suppose we have somebody who sells $100,000 worth of merchandise, they earn one commission rate up to a certain number, and then another commission rate after a certain number. So I'd like to give you perhaps the next 35 minutes or so to go ahead and try out these questions. And then at that point, we will take these up and see how you did. Hello, everyone, and let's have a look at how we did. So for these questions here, we'll just go through them. There's not too many, but we'll be okay. So 3.5% of 1,200. And so what we want to be writing here is we want to take our 3.5 divided by 100. So 3.5 divided by 100, that's going to give us 0.035. And then we're going to take our 0.035 and multiply it by the number given. And so we're going to multiply this out by 1,200, and that's going to give us 42 as an answer. Okay, so for these first few, not so concerning. They're just mainly variants of what we've already done. 5.75%. So same thing, we want to take our 5.75 and we want to, oh, not math assistant, we don't need you, divide it by 100. So in our calculator, 5.75 divided by 100, that's going to give us 0.0575. Okay. And then we're going to take our 0.0575 and multiply it by the number given. So that's going to be multiplied by 300. So on your calculator here, take our 0.0575, multiply it by 300, and that's going to give us this 17.25. So far, so good. Now, the only question that might be causing a little bit of a trouble spot here would be this 11.25%. So just keep in mind for this one here that we have this quarter. And if you say to yourself, hey, what is a quarter? And I can tell you, what if it's a quarter of money? You're going to tell me, oh, isn't that just 0.25? It is. And if necessary, on your calculator, you can take 1 divided by 4, and that'll give you this 0.25. And so we can rewrite this question as, well, 11.25% of 10,750. And now this question's been reduced to something we've now solved before. So we take our 11.25 divided by 100, and that's going to give us this 0.1125. And we're going to multiply this by our 10,750. So on our calculator, we multiply this by our number, and we're going to get this 1209,375. So I did get a question asked about what should we be rounding to. Now, my recommendation would be as follows. For questions 2, 3, and 4, you should be rounding that off to the nearest cents, because typically, and I'll write this as a note, we want to ensure money amounts are rounded to the nearest penny, or we would say 2 decimal places. However, in this example here, in question 1, these were just generic math questions that had no particular context, meaning that since they're not really about money, it's okay for us just to leave the decimals. We don't really need to do anything about that. However, if you wanted to, you could have rounded this to 1209.38, and that would have been fine as well. We're not too picky about those. Okay, you might be noticed I put a little dot above the equal sign. This just means approximately, because I want to introduce a little bit of math lingo and terms every once in a while. On your keyboard, you might notice this as well. There it is. There's a button on your keyboard that does this as well. It gives you a little wiggly line on this. It's beside the 1. So if you click shift the number beside the 1, you can get the squiggly sign, which also means approximate. So I could also write this as about 1209.38. So there we go. Okay. And so at any rate, let us continue on. We've got Noah, who is a stockbroker who earns 8.3% commission on the selling of every stock sold. How much does he earn on a stock that's sold for 24,000 something? So it should be noted here. You might be wondering, what is a stock? Think about a stock as an investment in a business. Okay. So we aren't going to get into the too specifics of what all these things are, but just know that it's some sort of investment. But for our purposes, we can proceed in the normal way. So note that if we take our 8.3 and we divide it by 100, we will get as an answer 8.3 divided by 100, the 0.083. And then we could take our 0.083 and multiply it by our 24,831.26. A little bit of a weird number, but there's nothing wrong with that. So we multiply it by 24,831.26, and that's going to give us $2,060.99. So we'll just copy this down here, I suppose. And there it is. So note that after the 9, there is a 4. Since 4 is 5 or less, we should be rounding down. Okay, and we'll include the dollar sign here because this is a money question. You can or you don't have to include the money sign if you don't want to. Like, it's not a huge deal either way. And so what have we next? Well, we've got Jamal. So Jamal works as a sales representative for a textile company. He earns a commission based on the following schedule. So the schedule in this context, all this means is according to this table or according to this method. He earns 15% commission on monthly sales up to 60,000, and he earns 20% commission on monthly sales over 60,000. So how much does he earn in 1 month if his sales were 100,000? So to help us get started here, it might be worth noting that the key number that we should be aware of is the 60,000. So if I were to take 100,000 and minus the 60,000, I get this 40,000, right? So why am I doing this? So if we have 100,000 minus sign 60,000, that's going to be equal to 40,000. So why was this relevant? Well, that was awful. My apologies. Here we go. So it should be noted that this 100,000, so we will write a note, 100,000 is equal to 60,000 plus sign 40,000. So why are we doing this? Well, if you notice, he earns 15% commission on all sales up to 60,000. So this is going to have a 15% commission. And on the 20%, he's going to earn this on all sales over 60,000. Well, as it turns out, we just found that $40,000 of that was going to be over that 60,000. So there's going to be a 20% commission on this amount. And so we've now broken down this question to its two components. So we're going to find a 15% commission on the first $60,000 and then find a 20% commission on the next 40. And so what does this look like? Well, for the $60,000 amount, we're going to take and note for our purposes here, 15 divided by 100. That's going to be that 0.15. So we want to find 0.15 multiplied by 60,000 because we want 15% commission. And so if we take our 0.15 and multiply it by 60,000, we're going to get $9,000. Okay. The next, we're going to do a similar procedure with the next 40,000 because this is going to have a 20% commission. And it's going to be 0.2 multiplied by 40,000. And so on our calculator, we can go ahead and type this in, 0.2 times 40,000. And that's going to be $8,000. And we can put a dollar sign in front of these, I suppose. And so what we can say then is that the total commission will be equal to this $9,000 plus the $8,000. And so we can type this into our calculator and add these together at high speeds. And so what do we get? Well, 9,000 plus sine 8,000 is going to give us 17,000. So a little bit of extra work, but again, if this was exactly like the toy question from the piecework, insofar as that if this had been continued on, like say for the first 60,000, then the next 60,000 and so forth, we could have broken up this money amount into as many categories as needed in order to ensure that we figured it out correctly. And I'm just correcting our font here. Lastly, but not leastly, let's have a look. We have the exact same kind of scenarios above. We have Brenda, who sells clothes in a boutique on Rodeo Drive. She earns 12% commission on weekly sales up to 20,000 and 15% on all sales over 20,000. So I suppose we can invoke the same kind of coloring scheme as before. How much does she earn in 1 week if her sales were 28,700? And note that this is going to look exactly the same as before, except instead of 60,000, it's going to be 20,000, and it's less nice on the eyes, visually appealing. Okay, so note, if we were to take our, I suppose this should be in purple here. There we go. And let's work in red. Okay, so if you take your 28,700 and minus sign off the 20,000, you get 8,700 left over. So if I were to take my 28,000 minus sign 20,000, that's going to give us 8,700. And note, we're doing 20,000 here because that's like the magic number that we were working about. And so what we're really saying is that 28,000 is going to be 28,700 is going to be equal to the 20,000, which we say is going to be at the 12% commission, plus sign 8,700 at the 15% commission. Okay, so we can go ahead and color code these. And so now let's have a look. 12% as a decimal. So if we take 12 divided by 100, that's going to be this 0.12. And so if we take, and so for the first 20,000, we're going to take 0.12 and multiply it by 20,000. Multiplying that out gives us $2,400. And for this, by the similar token, if we're interested in this 8,700 number, well, we want 15%. If we take 15 divided by 100, that's going to give us 0.15. And we're going to multiply that by, in this case, 8,700. And so if we take our 0.15, multiply it by 8,700, we're going to get as a solution here 1305. Okay, and so our total commission will be equal to this $2,400 plus this $1,305. There's our green, there's our purple. And so this is going to be equal to what? Well, $2,400 plus sign 1305 is going to give us 3705. And so with that, that's how you go ahead and figure out any sort of commission question from here. It's not too bad as long as you just have a look at what you're trying to solve for these. Okay.